Sean Victor.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Wiz Kids Forever. To give you a timestamp as I do for all of my episodes, today is Thursday, June the 12th, 2025, and we are only 13 days away from the 2025 NBA draft, and I'm super excited. The last piece of content that we did regarding the Washington Wizards was us crashing out on draft night a little over 3 weeks ago. And I think I've taken enough time to recollect my thoughts, align my vision on what I would like to see our Washington Wizards do. And wanted to talk about it and wanted to share it with you guys today. So before we get too deep into this video, you already know what I'm going to say. Be sure to comment, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. On the road to 3,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I can't do it without your help. And like I said in my last episode, after two treacherous years of trying to start up this podcast, I promise you consistent content. I promise you consistent talk and just consistent media coverage on your Washington Wizards. And without further ado, man, let's get into today's video. So with today's video, we're going to actually be looking at some of the favorites that's been reported through, NBA mock drafts, some, national media outlets and things of that nature, of some of the favorites that have been linked to our beloved Washington Wizards with the 6th overall pick in the 2025 draft. Like I said, after the draft lottery, I was crashing out because I really had the mindset, and it's on me. It's on me, as I said in the video, of us, like, there's no way that we were walking out of the draft with anything lower than the 3rd overall pick, right? And I was a fool believing that, being a Washington Wizards fan, because so Wizards as it can be, the Wizards left out of the draft lottery with the 6th overall pick. So that took us out not only the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, but the Dylan Harper, or seemingly the Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, BJ Edgecombe sweepstakes. A lot of talk regarding this draft is that while it's much better and much deeper than last year's draft, is that this draft is very top heavy, especially at the top 5. So being that the Wizards picked 6, it's kind of seeming like we got the short end of the stick. But we're going to take it in stride like Michael Winger and Will Dawkins are going to do come draft night, and move forward accordingly and still try to build this franchise into the contender that I hope to see before I pass away, that I hope to see at some point in my lifetime. But before I get too morbid, man, I actually wanted to pull up a picture. I think this was Damo, one of the GOATs over there on Washington Twitter. Shout out Damo 8186. And if you guys are checking out this video, that means you're super into the Washington Wizards. You guys more than likely know who Damo is, but Damo actually posted, and I've been looking and scouring the World Wide Web. I've been scouring Al Gore's internet to try to find where he got this screenshot that he actually posted on his page, what article he got this from, but I wasn't able to find it. I didn't put this through Chat GPT and everything else. I was unable to find it, but he actually screenshotted a clipping from some article or some write-up where they were talking about the Wizards regarding the draft, and it said that the team fit, regarding the team fit for the Wizards, it said the Wizards have some talent in the backcourt, but no one has emerged as a true primary playmaker. That's why they're seemingly, I need some hooked on phonics. That's why they're seemingly focused on Ferris, Trey Johnson, and Igor Deming. Ferris has the skills to become the lead playmaker for this group as a dynamic guard with a touchy attacking style and a knack for coming through as a clutch shooter. He was one of the college basketball's youngest freshmen, and it showed with his shaky decision-making as a shooter and passer. But he has a feel for the shot creation and a handle that lets him get anywhere on the floor. And so he may only need time to emerge as a star. And that's a pretty positive write-up for Jeremiah Ferris, guard out of Oklahoma. And the reason that I actually wanted to pull up this clipping and talk about it is that these are going to be the 3 prospects that we spotlight today. These are going to be the 3 prospects that we put a keen focus on today. Because as I've looked throughout the mock drafts from CBS Sports, NFL Draft Net, and things of that nature, Jeremiah Fears seems to be a popular pick to be the Wizards selection with the 6th overall pick. But I like the trifecta of prospects that were mentioned in that clip and that we just talked about in Trey Johnson, in Jeremiah Fears, and Igor Demon. I see a scenario where all three of these guys can be drafted by the Wizards and be success stories early into their career. While I don't see the franchise changing talent out of most of these guys, and I don't want to bury the lead before I get into this write-up, I think that all three of these guys can be instant contributors for our Washington Wizards. I love what they said in the write-up about us not having a true primary playmaker, because I do agree with it. While I've talked about how I would love Jordan Poole to stay with the Wizards long term, I don't necessarily think he brings that playmaking gravity outside of shooting, where he's going to, be the lead guard to take you over the top and lead you to a championship or, turn you into a franchise contending organization. I also believe that, we're all in the position where we have no choice but to take best player available with the 6th overall pick. So while, that trifecta of prospects we're going to be talking about today, while that does seem like a very, guard heavy focus, and it kind of shows where, Will Dawkins might be thinking regarding, the roster and the 6th overall pick. I don't think that, if Ace Bailey falls to the 6th overall pick, I think he should be the favorite, even though we weren't the highest on Ace when we were or when I thought we might have been picking, with the top 2 picks. I've said it on other, podcasts that I've been on. I would, while I didn't love drafting Ace Bailey with the top 3 pick, I would run to the podium to draft him with the 6th overall pick. So for, I start rambling too much, let's talk about these prospects that I mentioned in the news clipping. So we're actually going to talk about Jeremiah Fears first. Point guard out of Oklahoma, the one that they had the most extended talk about in that write-up. He's a freshman point guard that averaged 17, 4, and 4 on 43% shooting out of the University of Oklahoma. At the combine, he measured 6'2" without shoes, so he's around 6'3" and a half with a 6'5" wingspan. You got some T-Rex arms, going on. And that's been a lot of talk regarding Jeremiah Fears since the combine. And while it kind of it started me a little bit and it was a cause to pause, it didn't, absolutely turn me away from a prospect that I fell in love with while I was watching college basketball in real time. I don't love the wingspan, as I mentioned, but this is a guy as a lead ball handler who I think that at his peak, he can give you the rim pressure, the ball handling, and the creativity to be, a modern point guard, a lead guard in the modern NBA. He's a dynamic athlete, not in the vein of a John Wall or Derrick Rose or Russell Westbrook level, but I would definitely entrench him in the same, tier of an athlete as a guy like Scoot Henderson, they thought, and they were putting him up there with the likes of a Russell Westbrook, a Derrick Rose, and John Wall as far as athleticism pre-draft, and he has shown that he isn't that type of athlete. And even when we were, when they were talking about Scoot leading up to the 2023 draft, I was like, hold your horses when y'all comparing these guys to, like, there's a reason why those 3 names are always comped when we get a super twitchy athletic point guard. And with a John Wall, with a Derrick Rose and a Russell Westbrook, those guys came in similar times, and like it was like a new becoming, a new revolution of a point guard when those guys entered college basketball and entered the league. So a lot of people are quick to comp those when they see a super 6'3", 6'4" twitchy athletic guard that can get up and down the floor, and I hesitate to do that. But as I said, Jeremiah Fears is definitely in a Scoot Henderson tier as an athlete. I think, as I mentioned in the write-up, that he's become a better shooter, but he has a knack for the clutch shot. He gave the UConn Huskies everything that they could handle in the tournament. And him performing in the SEC as the freshman lead guard isn't anything to scoff at. The SEC, I don't know if you guys know, just set like the record for the most teams that participated in the NCAA tournament for one conference this past season. So that shows you how stacked and how deep this roster was. I mean, this conference was, and Jeremiah Fears was still able to put up 17, 4, and 4 as a freshman. His usage was pretty high, and that can be a good and a bad thing as far as like where you're trying to prorate his production. As far as like he's not going to be having this much usage in his rookie season in the NBA. So is he still going to be giving me 17, 4, and 4 type production in the time that he has? But it also shows me that he's capable of having or handling a high usage role, which we see so many dynamic league guards do in the NBA. He was the fastest player in the combine with the 3/4 court speed with a 3.04. That time is kind of similar to John Wall. And you know, while I do love him as an offensive playmaker, I love him as an offensive talent. He has a lot of mental lapses that not only show themselves on defense more than they do on offense, but they tend to show themselves on offense as well, time to time. He gets tunnel vision as a shooter, and I question his ability to make others better. I ultimately think that's one of the biggest skills that you need as a league guard in today's NBA. You see a guy like Tyrese Haliburton, who's currently up 2-1 in the NBA Finals, where he's not, high scoring output, scoring machine night in and night out. But one thing that you can guarantee when Tyrese Haliburton steps on the floor is that he's going to make his entire roster, every player that he plays with, better than they would without him. Better than they would without him. And that's one, characteristic and trait that I think is invaluable for a league guard in today's NBA. And I don't know if, Jeremiah Fears has that trait. And that's ultimately why I think there's a ceiling on Jeremiah Fears. And this is one of the reasons why, a lot of, draft experts and a lot of people that involve themselves with the draft say that, at 6, we're not going to be getting that franchise changing type talent, the one that was worth tanking for, because there's ceilings for all these guys if they, potentially don't pan out. And there's not a 100% guarantee that any of these guys are going to pan out. So speaking of ceilings, as I mentioned, if, I don't even want to compliment. If Jeremiah Fears reaches his peak, I can definitely see him being a De'Aaron Fox type contributor in the NBA early in his career. And that's his ceiling, in my opinion. Now, his floor, these are some of the reasons why he would be available at 6, is a guy like Monte Ellis, who, Monte Ellis is a dog. And if you've been following the NBA for a minute, Monte Ellis is the Mississippi Bullet. Like, Monte Ellis is going to get you a bucket. But Monte Ellis is the epitome of like the boy he's nice Hall of Fame, right? While, Monte Ellis is interesting, a lot of basketball minds who were watching in the early to mid 2000s, we look back and look at his career resume and, he didn't play in that many playoff games. He was never an all-star. So outside of him being all boy he's nice Hall of Fame or all boy that boy nice Hall of Fame, what did Monte Ellis really contribute to his organizations in the NBA? Now, I want to don't come for my neck and Golden State and Milwaukee. Monte Ellis is a hell of a player, but is Monte Ellis a guy that you're looking to change your franchise? No, that's why they shipped him out of there for the guy that would ultimately change their franchise in Stephen Curry. Moving on to another prospect that we talked about at the beginning of the video, and that's Igor Demon, 6'9". 6'9" point guard out of BYU that averaged 10 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists on 41% shooting. 6'9" point guard. He measured in as the tallest point guard in NBA draft history. Who did that sound like? That might have. I know. Will Dawkins had a boner. Sorry, I'm getting too graphic. I know Will Dawkins had a boner when he saw Igor Demon's measurements from the combine. 6'9", the 6'10" and a half wingspan. He got a little T-Rex arm going on as well, a little T-Rex arm syndrome going on with him as well. But guess what? When you a 6'9" point guard, it don't matter how long your arms are. Your arms can be the same length as your height, and you're going to have plus arm span and plus positional size at that position. And this is a guy that has an 8'9" standing reach as well. So the measurables check out. As I said, the tallest point guard in the history of the combine. And to just give you a brief synopsis on my opinions and the write-up on Igor Demon. This is a guy that was projected top 5 early in the year. He started the year guns a-blazing. He was throwing passes off of the backboard. He came in with a lot of hype with him being a big point guard. Everybody was saying what this 6'9" point guard was going to be able to do at the college basketball level, and he caught fire really quickly. He was never really a dynamic scoring threat throughout his entire year in college basketball, but throughout like December and January, the shooting numbers fell off a cliff. And his status is among top 5 draft pick fell off the cliff as well. There's a reason why 3 weeks ago, a lot of people were talking about how Igor Demon might be the pick at 18 because a lot of people were projecting him to be there. I'm going to tell you now, in 13 days, come the 2025 NBA draft, Igor Demon might be on the plane to his team come the 18th pick. He might be on the plane to the team that drafted him come the 18th pick. So if you think that we're going to be getting Igor Demon with the 18th pick, you fooling yourselves. Now, if you think picking him with the 6th overall pick is a reach, we can debate about that and we can have a discussion. But here are some of the reasons why I wouldn't mind it over here, WizKids Forever, if Igor Demon was the 6th overall pick. As I mentioned, he has the positional size that Will Dawkins covets and is a passable defender. A lot of guys with those, tall statures, they struggle at the point of attack. And Igor Demon struggles at the point of attack as well. But he's a passable defender enough where you can pair him with a shooting guard or a small forward type wing prospect, a wing type player that, is good at the point of attack, like, the Pacers do with Nembhard and, Aaron Nesmith with Tyrese Halliburton, who struggles at the point of attack. And I think Igor Demon is a passable enough defender where you can slide him on, the wing, the 3-and-D type wing, the wing that isn't, going to be requiring a lot of attention all on offense, and he'll more than hold his own on the defensive end. I have no problem about that. I don't want to be a hype beast. I don't want to be hot takey when I say this, and I don't want to speak in a lot of hyperbole, but after watching Igor Demon and watching him throughout college basketball in real time, I had this belief. And after watching the film over the last couple of weeks, Igor Demon is a passing wizard. He's a passing wizard. And I mentioned when I was talking about Jeremiah Ferris, one of the qualities and traits that I covet in somebody that's going to be a lead guard in the modern NBA is that, do you have the ability to make everybody around you better? And Igor Demon does that. He had BYU in the top 25 damn near all year. BYU, not playing with much other NBA talent. And I'm not going to go out on a limb when I say this. He is easily, by a landslide, the best passer in this class. And one thing that I look for in my draft philosophies throughout every sport is that when I'm drafting this player, does he do something elite out of every prospect? Am I getting one of the best players at this aspect of the game in this draft class with my 6th overall pick? And I believe that you're getting the best passer in this class with a guy like Igor Demon. He reminds me, and I don't want to go out on a limb, and a lot of people compare this guy, compare prospects to this guy when you get a big European point guard because he came over and took the NBA by storm as a rookie and has continue to take the NBA by storm in his 7 years since. But I do, and please don't hold my feet to the fire when I say this, but there's not too many guys with this type of play style either. That's why he's so unique. I do see remnants of Luka Doncic as a prospect in Igor Demon's game. Now, I'm not talking about, the potential MVP candidate year in and year out, Luka Doncic, that he's come to be in the NBA. I'm talking about Luka Doncic as a prospect. This is a guy that didn't go number 1 overall. I'm talking about Luka Doncic as a prospect coming out of Real Madrid. This is a guy that, teams had questions about, coming out of the draft with his defensive capabilities and things of that nature. That's the Luka Doncic I'm talking about. And these are some of the remnants that I see with a guy like Igor Demon. He needs a tighter handle, and it's totally understandable with a 6'9" point guard, but he needs a tighter and lower handle. And he needs to add strength to that frame if he ever wants to reach his ceiling. He shot it better in the workouts, and he shot it better later in the season. He never shot the clip off of the ball, but I've seen some workouts and some open gym runs that we all got to take with a grain of salt. because we've seen Mitchell Robinson hitting step back threes at a Chris Brinkley run. Like, we all got to take the open runs with a grain of salt. I've seen Rui Hachimura look like DeMar DeRozan and prime Kawhi Leonard at a Rico Hines, run. We all got to take him with a grain of salt. But when I've watched his, workouts that he has posted from the open runs and things of that nature, the form looks well. The form looks much improved, and he's shooting it really well in those, workout clips. But as I said, we got to take it with a grain of salt. I think that he plays with a high center of gravity. That's something he needs to improve on, and I think that he needs to get better at becoming a finisher and a play finisher or a play initiator off of 1 foot. Every shot that I saw him take in film was damn near off 2 feet, and that could be a gift and a curse in the NBA. But he's shown the capability, in my opinion, to play off 1 foot when he's passing and diming off things of that nature. So that's something that he would just have to work on in the NBA. And I think if he does that, he unlocks his game to an even level. But on to the last prospect that they talked about in that write-up, and that's Trey Johnson, 6'6" guard out of Texas. The best scorer in this class, averaging 20 points with 3 and 4. 20 points, 3 assists, 4 rebounds throughout, the course of the college basketball season as a freshman. I already talked about the SEC and how deep they were as a conference. Well, Trey Johnson led that conference in scoring as a freshman. The best scorer in this class, one of the best shooters in this class. And to be honest, Washington Wizard fans, they might not, I don't know, because this guy's become polarizing over the last couple of years. So, give or take what you made with this observation. This is just a Wiz Kids Forever observation. But I think that Trey Johnson's profile is similar to Bradley Beal coming out of Florida as a prospect. He's bigger. He's about 2-3 inches bigger. I think Bill was about 6'3" with shoes. Trey Johnson, checked out at about 6'5" without shoes. So he's about 6'6" with shoes. But I think that he has the capability of being a better playmaker earlier on than Bradley Beal. Bill relied a lot on getting his shot from, spoon-fed buckets from John Wall, even though he was capable of, showing the handle. He did show the handle in flashes and things like that, which we ultimately saw result in him becoming, a 30-point back-to-back, 30-point per game in back-to-back season type score. He took more, playmaking, league guard type duties and things of that nature. Well, I think that, if Trey Johnson is inserted in that role early on and just looking at it from a Wizards perspective and a Wizards lens, I think that he has all the capability of being a stud. I know he's a shooting guard by name. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was a shooting guard by name coming out of the University of Kentucky. And if I told you, I'm going to do a lot of these videos, especially now that they in the finals. I know they losing, but guess what? They got this shit. They got this. They in the finals. I'm going to be comping a lot of these parallels with our rebuild to OKC, where a lot of people question, how Shai was going to perform as a, lead point guard once, he was not under the tutelage of a Chris Paul and a Dennis Schroeder anymore. And, he's taking that and passed the test with flying colors, resulting in the MVP. I think that Trey Johnson has that capability as well, even though a lot of people want to pigeonhole him as just a shooting guard. I think that the sky's the limit for Trey Johnson as a prospect. If you put the ball in his hands, if you give him a lot of usage, I think that, the outcome and the results are going to be a positive and a good one because he's just a hooper, man. I know I mentioned SGA, and I'm not going to compliment SGA because this is a guy is the reigning NBA MVP. But I see a lot of what I saw from a young SGA because I was one of the first in the world. I believe in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander more than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander believed in himself. I got the tweets to prove it from 2018 and 2017. And I see the same type of potential in a guy like Trey Johnson. He can play off the bump. He has counters. He don't have as many counters as Shai, because Shai got 1,001, counters in his bag, but he got enough counters and more counters in his offensive bag than, your typical freshman. He scores at a high clip. He scores at a high rate. The only thing that I question is his passing, as I did with a Jeremiah Fears. But, a lot of people question Shai's passing coming out. So if you can get him with the right developmental team, I think that he's a good enough defender where, he's not going to be, even with his high offensive outputs, he's not going to be giving up the same amount on this end where, it's also ultimately a wash. I think he has enough defensive prowess to win his matchup on a night in and night basis. And yeah, I wouldn't mind any of these prospects. So if you were saying Jalen, like if you were ranking these three prospects, Jeremiah Fears would definitely be 3, even though he's the most popular prospect that's been mocked to Washington. And it's honestly a toss-up. I don't want to duck it right now and take the easy way out. It's honestly a toss-up between Igor Demon and Trey Johnson for me, because I think Trey Johnson has the scoring gravity where, he can be the lead scorer on a finals contending type team. But I also think that Igor Demon, has the passing gravity and a playmaking gravity where he can be the lead guard and the lead initiator and the play initiator for a franchise team, a finals contender franchise as well. So if I had to go out and you putting guns in my head, hopefully nobody's doing that. Hopefully nobody is having to put a gun to my head. But if you were putting a gun in my head, I would probably lean with the Wizards selecting Igor Demon. Just with the positional size, they love their international flavor as well. And I think that he has the potential to be one of the better playmakers in the NBA within the next 3 to 5 years. One wild card I wanted to keep your eyes on Carter Bryant. I know, he's marked around 10 to 12 right now. I know he only played 19 minutes per game at the University of Arizona, but this is a 6'8" forward who has all the positional size. He has the height and the wingspan that, our front office covets. He only averaged 6 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist in 19 minutes per game. But there was a reason why he was a 5-star prospect coming out of Arizona. If you give him the usage, not the same usage that he got in high school where he was a star, but if you put the ball in his hand similar to like how we brought Bilal along, I think he's shown more shot creation than at the amateur level than a guy like Bilal did coming into the 2023 draft. So I think that, pairing Carter Bryant with a guy like Bilal can potentially provide a demon dynamic duo on the wing. Especially that's athleticism out the ass. That's athleticism out the ass. So let me go ahead and end this video before I start cussing too much and YouTube don't show y'all this video and try to demonetize me. But hopefully you've learned about some prospects. You learned more about some prospects than you did at the beginning of this video, particularly how they would translate to, the Washington Wizards franchise and the Washington Wizards organization. As always, if you're not following us on social media, what are you doing? At WizKidsForever on Instagram, at X, right? Oh, there, right there. WizKidsForever, WizKidsForever. If you're listening to us on audio-only platforms such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a review. That's how we finesse these algorithms so that when you're searching anything Washington Wizards, WizKidsForever is that #1 content hub that pops up in your search bar. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Infiltrate the comments. Let me know who you want the Wizards to pick with this overall pick. I'm going to have our favorites at the 18th overall pick coming out within the next coming days as well. So that's why you need to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button so you're not missing that notification when it drops for that video. And I'll check in on y'all on the flip side.